everyone, this is Deshauna E. Morgan and you're watching Bridal Lace House. Times of trouble, God is a very present help. And not only is that bird chirping a clue to what he can do for you, to chime into your life in a way where there is peaceable sound, a peaceable understanding that surpasses all. That when you get into a relationship, how that mixed relationship, that twined certainty can guarantee you for a heavenly outcome. When I talk about marriage, I'm talking about marriage from a perspective of having seen a marriage for over 25 years. I've seen a lasting marriage for 25 years. Then I have witnessed others that have had marriages. There's a lot of people in my family that are married. And then from personal experiences, I've read the Bible from beginning to end. So it's almost as if some of my research studies of being a bridal designer, as well as someone who has put on some shows for this type of aspect of marriage. And so much the more, I've seen a lot of portions to where even when I wasn't in a position to do something that counted towards being a bridal wear designer, that there would be couples to come to me and talk with me. Now this would be maybe with door-to-door sales. Gentlemen or the woman that have seen me on many occasions on my workflow, and they would see my ring and then they would ask certain questions or my belief system about being a Christian. And you know, when you talk about Christianity, it can open a door as to how your commitment with others can work. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be relational. Like I talked to some of my nieces, in particular my oldest niece, which is 17, and we talk about a lot of variety of things, but she's getting to an age where dating will be something that we would probably have to talk about if she doesn't talk about it already with her parents. So marriage, and marriage in a way to where now you have come to the understanding that this man is the one for you, and you have children coming into the marriage, and you as a man realize that this woman is for you, and you're coming into a marriage with children. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you both have to cooperate with one another on how your children feel. But there are some guidelines that we have to teach children and to just know as adults ourselves when jumping into a marriage and having children involved. Number one is psychology shows that if you are a new spouse within this child's life, that you're to approach him almost as a coach, or daughter almost as a coach would, being someone that's very open. Don't go strictly into parent mode trying to resurface the whole thing. It takes time to build a relationship, and it even takes time to rekindle relationships. But when you pray about things, they happen quickly. I'm a living witness. So we're coming into this new relationship. We're feeling good about it. You are a Christian. You have prayed about this and you feel certain. And you have to come into the understanding of the age levels of certainty on dependency within this child's life. Dependency means, is this child at an age to where they're an adolescent and you know they need a supportive figure in their life? Or are they a teenager where you understand what is that communication like? And if they're an adult and you're coming into a marriage, there are certain deficiencies or dependent variables in that manner. So let's start off with the adolescent. You're a man or a woman coming into a marriage and your significant other that you love has an adolescent child, and maybe multiple adolescent child, but let's focus on just one. And the approachable sense is not you coming in and taking the place of someone, but you coming in as knowing that because your spouse, your new spouse, does not have that contact with the other parent, that you are now going to step in fully as that parent. You're going to commit yourself to being that figure, not to replace, but to being that figure. Because if you try to replace someone, that only means you're stepping in the same likeness of their mannerism and their shoes. You want to create your own identity within this new marriage of coming into this adolescent's life, and realizing if the adolescent is a young lady or a young man, that these are the things that we have to focus on, building up their characters to know of how to be a young man or a young woman. Now, if you were not taught certain things in life on how to raise a child or how to give that surety of identity to an adolescent in the form of marriage, that would mean reading the Bible, praying, and communicating with your peers. Your peers means people in your age group. You could be at work, church, try to go out, not to the bars or anything, but look up some events within your local community. I'm pretty sure if you go to church and you get well developed in there, there'll be events in the church and people in the church to tell you about other events as well. That's how you can build your communication skills. Age appropriate dressing. Are you able to teach your new adolescent child as stepping in? And that's what a stepchild comes from. You know, a stepdad, a stepmom. It's when you have to physically step in the place of someone that is not performing the duty of a parent. That doesn't mean stepping to replace, but stepping in the place of, to teach, to train. And again, that approach stage is to be like a coachable sense. Like, I'm going to step in as a stepdad or as a stepmom and talk to this child like I'm going to coach them on a football team or a soccer team or something curricular interest that they like. Number two is the teenager. You're stepping in with the teenager. And another disclaimer I would like to mention is I have been in the educational system for over 8 years. So the behaviors of a child from pre-K to 12th grade, I have highly good knowledge of, and I am degreed, and as well as me being in the medical field. So my goal, and I'm actually in school currently to become an OBGYN, but my first degree was in fashion design and architect. So that's where the bridal designing comes from. Many disclaimers. So whoever's watching, it's not like I'm just talking out the side of my mouth and coming up with things that just aren't proven to be true. If you're talking to a teenager and you're stepping into their life and you want something with them, or you will have something with them, of course, because you're in a new marriage, it is best to also approach them as a coach, you know, with age and being relatable and being a little bit strict. Not strict to the point where you are not yourself, but having a judgment mentality means if I see this kid come in the house smelling like paraphernalia, and obviously his eyes are shot red and he has on casual clothes, but he's only 18 and he still stays with his parents, that's something that you need to judge. That's something you need to discipline. I'm judging in a mannerism to know that this is not good behavior, especially if you're in high school, because when you take drugs in high school or drugs in life, you can definitely come into this withdrawal state from society. So I'm going to have an approachable mannerism to this adolescent child. I'm going to have an approachable coach mannerism to this teenager, talking about relatable topics, listening to music that they listen to, because whether you're the holiest of Christians or the worst of sinners, everyone comes from a background of knowing different types of things that happen in the world, regardless if you do them or not. Being relatable is the number one thing and communication that I have learned as a Christian to have with others. And for the adult, let's say you're getting into a marriage and your spouse has an adult child, there's not too much you can do. You can teach an adult new things as far as them learning, but you can't teach them the ways of what they should have done or what they could have done as a child and a teenager, because that would be replacing something that was already taught to them and trying to restructure them and trying to change their personality. You don't want to try to change anyone. You really don't have to try too hard to come into someone's life and redirect them in a better testament. You don't have to go and try to change your personality, but to reconstruct your mindset is something different. And that's what just simply reading the Bible, praying day and night, that Matthew chapter 6, verse 9 through 13. Go with the flow sometimes. When you have an adult, you're stepping into their life to become some sort of spouse to your significant other. It's not really about that child. It's not really about that adult. It's about you and your spouse at that point. So to summarize, the adolescent, you can teach them things that you have not been able to defy them as being. Like, you see this kid is a little over the top, little hyperactivity, but he's not in any sports, and you've played sports. You can teach that child some sports. The teenager, you know, it's all about discipline as far as coming into their life in a coachable sense for the adolescent and the teenager. And for the adult, it's not about that adult child. They're 32 now. You're 56 or 63. And they could come along into that. They don't have to. Sometimes people want to see their own parents together as well. So